Hello! Welcome to the overview of the Climate Ready Communities Assessment Tool, CRC Assessment Tool. The CRC Assessment Tool is more than an assessment. It is also a learning tool designed to help local governments across Canada plan for and respond to the impacts of a changing climate, and to build climate resilience.
This initiative is offered through the Green Municipal Fund. Delivered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, GMF manages approximately $2.4 billion in programs funded by the Government of Canada. This video will help you understand the purpose and structure of the CRC Assessment Tool, how it supports climate adaptation efforts at the local level, and the key steps involved in using it. A step-by-step demonstration will show you how to navigate the tool and complete the 5 stages of the process, with tips shared along the way to support a successful experience. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of how the tool can support your adaptation journey. Be familiar with its components and feel confident in completing the 5 steps effectively.
The CRC Assessment Tool encourages local governments to consider who is most impacted by climate change and to shape strategies that are fair, inclusive, and community-informed. Equitable climate adaptation recognizes unequal climate impacts. Some groups, including Indigenous peoples and other equity-deserving populations, experience greater exposure to climate risks and have fewer resources to manage them. Addresses barriers to access and participation. This means identifying what gets in the way of fair involvement and ensuring everyone has the opportunity to contribute to and benefit from adaptation efforts. Prioritizes Indigenous and equity-deserving leadership. Equity means elevating the voices and leadership of those most affected, not just including them after decisions are made. Embeds fairness in planning and decisions. It's not only about fair outcomes, it's about how decisions are made and who is involved throughout the process. Leads to climate strategies that are just, locally relevant, and community-supported. When equity is built into the process, adaptation becomes more effective and more trusted by the people it's meant to serve.
Local governments need clarity, direction, and simplicity when it comes to climate adaptation, and that's exactly what the CRC Assessment Tool is built to provide. The purpose of the CRC Assessment Tool is to support local governments in understanding and tracking adaptation progress. It offers a structured and reliable way for local governments to assess how far they've come in adapting to climate change. Clarify what local climate adaptation involves. By breaking adaptation into manageable parts, the tool helps make sense of what this work looks like in practice. Guide municipalities on next steps at every stage of progress. Whether a local government is just getting started or already taking action, the tool helps identify specific actionable next steps. Simple and beginner-friendly. Designed for easy use by municipal staff. The tool doesn't require technical expertise or consultants. It's practical, accessible, and built with real municipal capacity in mind.
The CRC Assessment Tool offers several important benefits for local governments at every stage of their adaptation journey. It builds internal awareness of current adaptation efforts. By going through the tool, staff and leadership gain a clearer picture of what climate adaptation looks like in their context and how their existing work fits into it. It encourages reflection and cross-departmental dialogue. The process creates space for honest conversations across teams, helping identify what's working, what's missing, and where to improve. It identifies next steps with actionable guidance. The tool doesn't just highlight gaps, it also points toward practical actions that local governments can take, no matter their starting point. It supports consistent tracking and reporting over time. This makes it easier to monitor progress internally and to communicate clearly with councils, funders, or community members. It reveals capacity-building needs. By surfacing where more support, knowledge, or resources are needed, the tool helps local governments strengthen their adaptation efforts moving forward.
The scale provides a common set of standards and language that local governments can use to communicate their progress internally and externally. Using a scale creates a shared language to communicate progress. This shared language makes it easier to talk about adaptation work clearly, both within the organization and with external partners or stakeholders. Builds consistent understanding across departments. Without a common reference point, teams may have different views of where things stand. A scale helps align everyone on the same page, establishes a clear organization-wide baseline. It supports agreement on where the organization is starting from, which is essential for setting goals and measuring progress over time. Supports aligned planning through a common roadmap. The assessment links directly to a roadmap that helps prioritize next steps, keeping everyone focused on shared climate adaptation goals.
In this section, we'll look at the core components of the tool and how they work together.
Before we dive into the components of the tool, it's important to highlight how Reconciliation plus AREI, short for Reconciliation and Anti-Racism, Equity and Inclusion, is embedded in the CRC Assessment Tool. This framework helps address systemic barriers and supports the creation of respectful, inclusive communities. These principles are embedded across the pillars and milestones of the tool, shaping how progress is assessed and decisions are made. The progress statements are designed with Reconciliation plus AREI considerations, encouraging users to reflect on the work they've done and whether it was approached with an equity lens. The suggested activities to make progress promote inclusive engagement and collaboration, ensuring your future actions are built on perspectives from diverse voices and equitable partnerships. Pillar 2 includes a dedicated Reconciliation plus AREI assessment for each milestone. This unique component supports deeper reflection on how these principles are considered in risk and adaptation planning. In the next section, we'll walk through the structure of the tool and explore what these elements are and how they are applied in practice.
The core components of the tool include 3 pillars that represent groupings of key components or milestones of reconciliation, plus AREI-informed climate adaptation. 11 milestones that represent key elements that make up each of the 3 pillars. These milestones reflects a major step that local governments typically take for climate adaptation, a self-assessment to evaluate progress. The self-assessment involves using columns with progress statements and activities for each pillar. They are intended to work together to support you in developing your own customized plan for reconciliation, plus AREI-informed climate adaptation. A snapshot that provides a summary of your self-assessment results across the 3 pillars. After completing the self-assessment, the tool automatically generates a visual summary that can be used to communicate your current state. And finally, a roadmap that allows users to summarize and prioritize activities to make progress over the next 2 years. We'll now switch to the Excel-based CRC Assessment Tool and show you these components. Together, these components provide a practical framework for understanding current status, setting direction, and supporting long-term resilience planning.
The foundation of the CRC Assessment Tool lies in its 3 pillars. Each pillar represents a grouping of key milestones that contribute to effective climate adaptation. The first pillar is people, partnerships, and governance. This pillar focuses on leadership, internal collaboration, and partnerships, both within the organization and with the broader community. It lays the groundwork for building capacity and creating the conditions needed to support long-term adaptation. There are 4 milestones in this pillar. The first one is internal resourcing and collaboration. Allocate internal resources, human and financial, and establish internal collaboration processes to support reconciliation plus AREI-informed climate adaptation work. This work lays the foundation for meaningful progress by ensuring the right people, structures, and supports are in place to carry adaptation forward across the organization. External collaboration and partnerships. Engage and partner with local and regional First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and urban indigenous peoples, communities and organizations, as well as jurisdictions, institutions, organizations, communities of practice, and/or stakeholders on reconciliation plus AREI-informed climate adaptation efforts. Building these relationships strengthens adaptation efforts by bringing in diverse knowledge, fostering trust, and creating more coordinated and community-centered solutions. The third milestone in this pillar is council commitment and climate adaptation policy. develop council support for and commitment to implementing reconciliation, plus AREI-informed climate adaptation work, and adopt policies reflective of that support and commitment. Council endorsement helps legitimize and sustain adaptation efforts, ensuring they are backed by policy and aligned with the local government's broader vision and values. The final milestone in this pillar is engagement, awareness, and education. Engage with, raise awareness amongst, and educate staff and community members about climate adaptation and their roles in contributing to community resilience and reconciliation, plus AREI-informed ways. This kind of outreach helps build a shared understanding of climate risks and responsibilities, creating the support and participation needed for inclusive, community-driven adaptation.
Let's move on to the second pillar and its milestones. The second pillar is risk and adaptation planning. This pillar involves assessing climate risks and developing a comprehensive adaptation plan. It's about identifying vulnerabilities and creating strategies that respond to the unique needs and priorities of the community. There are 4 milestones in the risk and adaptation planning pillar. Starting with milestone 5, prepare, establish the foundation. Establish the foundation for the climate risk assessment and adaptation plan by defining the scope, gathering necessary resources, outlining a framework, and developing an engagement strategy. This milestone sets the stage for a focused, coordinated process, helping ensure that the climate risk assessment and adaptation plan are grounded in clear direction, adequate support, and meaningful participation. The 6th milestone is identify climate impacts. Determine expected local climate changes and identify potential associated impacts. Understanding how climate change may affect the local context is essential for making informed decisions. It ensures that adaptation efforts are targeted, relevant, and responsive to real risks. The 7th milestone in this pillar is analyze and evaluate climate risks. Assess the community's vulnerability to the identified impacts and their likelihood and consequence. This step helps local governments understand which risks are most urgent or severe, so they can prioritize actions that protect people, infrastructure, and services. The 8th and final milestone in this pillar is develop a climate adaptation plan. Prepare a climate adaptation plan that outlines a vision, goals, and actions to help the community adapt to climate change while meeting community needs and objectives. The adaptation plan turns the assessment into action, providing a clear path forward that reflects both the climate risks identified and the values and priorities of the community.
The third pillar in the CRC Assessment Tool is called Implementation and Integration. This pillar is about putting the adaptation plan into action, integrating it into municipal plans, policies, and daily operations, and sustaining those efforts over time. This pillar has 3 milestones, starting with milestone 9, implement climate adaptation plan. Identify, plan, and execute actions that implement the climate adaptation plan in reconciliation plus AREI-informed ways. This milestone is where planning becomes practice, turning strategies into actions that build resilience and reflect community priorities. The 10th milestone is integrate into organizational systems, processes, and plans, bring climate adaptation considerations into planning, decision-making, and processes in reconciliation, plus AREI-informed ways. Embedding adaptation across the organization helps ensure that climate resilience becomes part of how decisions are made and services are delivered, not just a standalone project. The 11th and last milestone in this tool is monitor and review. Track information relevant to the climate risk assessment and adaptation plan and their implementation and integration. Ongoing monitoring helps local governments stay responsive, learning from experience, adjusting as conditions change, and keeping adaptation efforts effective and accountable over time.
Now that you've seen the 3 pillars and the corresponding milestones in the tool, let's take a moment to reflect on how these elements work together. The pillars are presented in a specific order, but in practice, they are deeply interconnected. Progress in one area can directly support and strengthen progress in another. The first pillar, people, partnerships, and governance, plays a particularly central role. Strong leadership, governance structures, and meaningful community engagement help connect assessment and planning with real, practical action. The milestones are one of the tool's key strengths. They break the climate adaptation process into manageable, focused steps, helping local governments see where they are, what gaps exist, and what priorities should come next. They're also flexible. While the milestones are numbered, they aren't meant to be completed in order. Local governments can begin wherever it makes sense for their context, capacity, or momentum. For example, some may start with a climate risk assessment to build a strong evidence base, while others might focus on collaboration and partnerships to create internal support for future work. Like the pillars, you'll find that progress in one milestone often supports progress in others, creating momentum and laying the groundwork for more comprehensive action over time. Let's take a moment to review the 5 steps to using the CRC Assessment Tool before we walk through the tool itself. These steps will guide you from understanding your current position to identifying what to focus on next. Step 1. Assess. Where are we at? In this step, you'll complete the self-assessment by selecting progress statements for each milestone and reviewing the suggested activities that support advancement. Step 2. Reflect. Where do we want to go? Once the assessment is complete, you'll reflect on the results and identify priority areas for the next 1 to 2 years. Step 3. Identify. How could we get there? Next, you'll identify specific actions that can help you make progress. These can come from the tool's suggested activities, your existing plans, or both. Step 4. Review your snapshot. The snapshot provides a visual summary of your assessment results. It's generated automatically and can be used to support internal communication and reporting. Step 5. Chart your roadmap. The roadmap is a space to record up to 5 priority actions to guide your adaptation efforts over the next couple of years.
Self-assessment is the first and most central step in using the CRC Assessment Tool. It's the process local governments use to evaluate their current progress across the 11 milestones. We'll begin this step with Pillar 1, People, Partnerships, and Governance. Let's take a moment to familiarize ourselves with the layout of the assessment for this pillar. At the top of the tool, you'll see the title of the pillar. Pillar 1, People, Partnerships, and Governance. Directly below the title, you'll find Step 1, Assess Where Are We At? Next, you'll see the milestones numbered in Column A, with each milestone's name and description provided in Column B. These milestones are the key components that you'll assess to determine your local government's current state in climate adaptation. Each milestone includes progression columns, where you will select all statements that best reflects your current level of progress. These progression columns are easily identifiable by their white background and checkboxes. There are 4 progression columns: Not Yet Started, Some Progress Made, More Progress Made, and Advanced Practices. Under each milestone, you will notice space for you to write some notes to describe how you have achieved this milestone. You will complete the assessment for each of these milestones.
After completing the assessment for all 4 milestones, you'll move to Step 2. Reflect, where do we want to go? Here, you'll consider your local government's vision for climate resilience over the next 2 years. Reflect on your self-assessment results and think about which areas you'd like to prioritize.
The final part of the self-assessment is Step 3. Identify, how could we get there? This step is about choosing the actions that will help your local government make progress in the priority areas from Step 2. You will repeat this 3-step process for each of the 3 pillars to complete your self-assessment.
After completing the self-assessment for all 3 pillars, you'll move on to the Snapshot and Roadmap tab, which is the final sheet in the tool. This section provides a visual summary of your local government's progress. This snapshot is designed to serve as a communication tool, allowing you to easily share your progress with stakeholders. It can also be printed on letter-sized paper for convenience. The Roadmap section is where you can document up to 5 of your priorities moving forward. These could be from the suggested activities in each pillar, your existing priorities, or a mix of both. We recommend reviewing the activities outlined in Step 3 of the 3 pillars and copy-pasting your top 5 priorities here. This will help create a clear and actionable plan for your local government's next steps in climate adaptation.
In this next section, we'll walk through the CRC Assessment Tool, completing the 5 steps from self-assessment to the roadmap. 6 tabs in this Excel-based tool. Let's look at each tab. The first tab in the CRC Assessment Tool is the Introduction tab, and it's highly recommended that you read it thoroughly before starting your assessment. At the top of the page, you'll find a brief overview that emphasizes the tool's grounding in reconciliation, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion. These values are integrated throughout the tool and help guide how local governments approach climate adaptation in an inclusive and equitable way. Next, you'll see 3 key statements that outline the tool's purpose and what it is designed to help local governments achieve. These statements offer helpful context for how the tool supports your adaptation efforts. As you scroll down, you'll find a summary of the tool's core components, including the 3 pillars, the 11 milestones, and the self-assessment process that forms the foundation of the tool. You'll also see a section titled Using the Tool, which introduces the 5 steps we introduced earlier to complete the assessment. At the bottom of the page is the Acknowledgement section, which begins with a land acknowledgement that recognizes the indigenous peoples who have historically occupied and continue to steward the lands where this work was developed. The section also includes credits recognizing the individuals and organizations who contributed to creating the tool, a reflection of the collaborative effort behind it.
Moving on to the next tab in the tool, called Org Info. This tab provides space for you to enter key details about your organization. Here, you'll need to record the name of the lead applicant, name of your municipality, the province or territory you're located in, the title of your project, and the date of the assessment. Completing this page is essential if you're receiving grants or training under the Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation, LLCA, program. The assessment cannot be considered complete without it. If any of the required fields are left blank or filled out incorrectly, you'll encounter error messages prompting you to make corrections. Make sure all the information is accurate before moving forward in the assessment. Let's start the self-assessment with the first pillar, People, Partnerships, and Governance. You'll find it on the 3rd tab of the spreadsheet. As a reminder, this pillar is essential for establishing the internal and external structures needed to support climate adaptation work. At the top of the tool, you'll see the title of the pillar. Directly below the title, you'll find Step 1, Assess, Where are we at? This section includes a description. By selecting the statements at each level of progression that best represent your organization, you can assess your starting place and what work has already been done to adapt to climate change. Next, you'll see the milestones numbered in column A, with each milestone's name and description provided in column B. Each milestone includes progression columns, where you will select all statements that best reflects your current level of progress. These progression columns are easily identifiable by their white background and checkboxes. There are 4 progression columns: Not Yet Started, Some Progress Made, More Progress Made, and Advanced Practices. In addition to the progression columns, each milestone has corresponding suggested activities columns. These columns are shaded in green and list suggested activities. These activities provide actionable steps tailored to help your local government advance through the different levels of progress. Each set of suggested activities is categorized to focus on specific areas, such as human resources, financial resources, and community engagement, making it easier to identify relevant actions and next steps. The tool incorporates validation messages to guide you through the assessment process. If you haven't checked off any progress under a milestone, a yellow message will appear. This serves as a reminder that you need to complete the assessment for that specific milestone before moving on. If you inadvertently mark progress in a way that contradicts your previous selections, a red message will pop up. This alerts you to the error, allowing you to correct your input before proceeding. For example, if you selected No Progress has been made and go on to select another progression statement indicating progress, you will get an error message. When you correctly complete the assessment for a milestone, a green message will inform you that you've done well and can move on to the next milestone.
We'll start by assessing our municipality's progress on the first milestone. Let's say your municipality has started building internal capacity. You have a few staff who are either required or personally motivated to consider climate adaptation in their roles. These staff occasionally connect through informal meetings, but there's no formal structure in place yet. Budgets for adaptation are still limited or ad hoc, but there's clear interest and some early momentum. In this case, you could select the 3 statements in Some Progress Made column. Before moving on to the next milestone, let's document how we achieved this milestone. A few staff have climate adaptation responsibilities and meet informally. No formal collaboration structure or dedicated budget, but initial interest and coordination are emerging. Milestone 2 is external collaboration and partnerships. In this scenario, your municipality hasn't yet begun engaging with indigenous communities or external partners on climate adaptation. There's general recognition that collaboration is important, but no outreach has taken place, and no relationships or processes are in place yet. So you would select Not Yet Started. Let's take some notes to document progress on this milestone. We have not yet identified potential partners or engagement opportunities. For milestones 3, Council Commitment and Climate Adaptation Policy, let's assume Council hasn't formally endorsed a climate adaptation policy yet, but they recognize its importance and generally support the direction. There's informal buy-in, which could provide a foundation for future policy development and formal commitment. In this case, you could select Council recognizes the importance of climate adaptation, and you would document your notes below. Council has expressed informal support for adaptation work, though no formal policies or commitments have been made yet. Moving on to the final milestone in this pillar: engagement, awareness, and education. For this milestone, let's say your municipality has made some early efforts to build internal and community awareness. Staff and council have a basic understanding of climate change and climate hazards. Internally, there's recognition of the need for more structured education, but foundational awareness is in place. On the community side, some residents have received education or messaging about climate adaptation and the work the municipality is doing, though engagement isn't yet widespread. Based on this, we'll go to the Some Progress Made column and select Staff and Council have a basic understanding of climate change and/or climate hazards under Staff and Council heading. And some community members have some awareness of and/or education about climate adaptation and the work we are doing under the community heading. Let's take a moment to capture notes on our progress for this milestone. Some staff and community members have climate adaptation knowledge. More education and community engagement is needed.
Now we're ready to start step 2. As a reminder, this is where we want to highlight some priority areas based on your assessment results. So far, your municipality has made some progress. There's some internal capacity, with staff involvement and informal collaboration, but limited resources and formal processes. External engagement hasn't begun, and there are no partnerships in place. Council is generally supportive, but there's no formal policy. Staff, council, and some community members have basic awareness, though engagement remains limited and informal. Based on these results, your priorities might be: allocate financial resources, initiate collaboration with Indigenous communities and other partners, provide more training to staff, help council better understand how adaptation connects to the community's long-term vision. Next, we will work on step 3 to identify specific activities or actions we can take to address the priority areas. We can use the suggested activities in the shaded columns to help with this step. Let's go back to milestone 1 and take a look at some of the suggested activities. Based on our earlier discussion, you might decide that working with finance and other teams to identify how to allocate increased and more consistent financial resources to climate adaptation is the most appropriate next step for your organization. If that feels like a good fit, you can enter it here in step 3. Let's look at one more priority area and consider some possible actions. In step 2, we identified more training for staff as a priority. So let's return to milestone 4 and explore the suggested activities. You might find that identify education initiatives and offerings related to climate adaptation that can be promoted to staff and council to address awareness gaps. If so, go ahead and capture that in step 3. You have successfully completed the self-assessment for the first pillar.
Moving on to Pillar 2, Risk and Adaptation Planning, it's important to note that this pillar follows the same three-step approach as the first pillar, but uses a different progression scale. This allows local governments to assess their climate adaptation efforts across three critical areas: service areas, climate hazards, and reconciliation, plus AREI. We'll provide the rationale behind the three different assessment columns for this pillar. Service areas. Local governments often have unique challenges in different departments, and each may be at a different stage in adapting to climate impacts. While there may be some overlap between service areas, departments often operate independently. By focusing on these specific areas, you can clearly see where progress has been made and where more work is needed. Climate hazards. Local governments often face risks from multiple climate hazards, and you may only be focusing on a subset of these at the moment. This approach ensures the local government is assessing climate risks from all relevant hazards. Reconciliation plus AREI is a major focus in this pillar to ensure equity considerations are built into the risk assessment and adaptation planning process so that equity-deserving groups are actively engaged in the climate risk assessment and adaptation planning process. While the progression scale is different in this pillar, the structure of this pillar is similar to Pillar 1, with the title and description at the top. The milestone number, name, and description in columns A and B. The progress columns have a white background with check marks, and the suggested activities are shaded. Unlike the first pillar, the progress statements are the same for each milestone, and you must check off your progress for each of the three columns for all milestones within this pillar. Similar to Pillar 1, this pillar also incorporates validation messages to guide you through the assessment process. Yellow message to indicate incompleteness, red message to indicate an error, and green message to proceed to the next step.
We will now complete the 3 steps of the self-assessment. Starting with Milestone 5, prepare. Establish the foundation. Perhaps in your discussion you learned that the Stormwater Department conducted a project planning session as part of a climate risk assessment in response to flooding. That planning session helped define the project scope, gather initial data, and outline a framework for assessing risk, which means one service area and one climate hazard can be marked as addressed. But that is the only department that has done any work in this area. In this case, you'd select, we have completed for at least one service area, and we have completed for a single climate hazard. However, no consideration of reconciliation plus AREI principles were built into the process. So for the reconciliation plus AREI column, we'll select, we have not integrated reconciliation plus AREI. Let's take a moment to capture notes below this milestone. We have not initiated a community-scale multi-hazard climate risk assessment. The Stormwater Department has done some initial work, but more is needed across other service areas. For Milestone 6, we'll keep building on the same scenario. The Stormwater Department, as part of their climate risk assessment for flooding, identified some of the key climate changes and related impacts for that service area. No other departments have started this work, so we'll mark, we have completed for at least one service area, and we have completed for a single climate hazard, and we have not integrated reconciliation plus AREI, similar to the previous milestone. Let's take a moment to capture notes below this milestone. Climate impacts have only been identified for stormwater in relation to flooding. Broader analysis across multiple service areas and hazards is still needed. Following the same scenario we've been using, we can apply a similar status to Milestone 7. The Stormwater team completed a risk evaluation focused on flooding, so we'll select, we have completed for at least one service area. We have completed for a single climate hazard, and we have not integrated reconciliation plus AREI. Again, capturing some notes below this milestone. Stormwater team evaluated risks related to flooding. Equity considerations not included. The final milestone in this pillar is develop a climate adaptation plan. In this scenario, while the stormwater flooding project did help identify risks, it was focused on a single hazard and did not lead to the development of a comprehensive adaptation plan. No other departments have created a plan either, so we'll select, we have not completed for any service areas. We have not completed for any climate hazards. And we have not integrated reconciliation plus AREI. In the notes, we can write, no adaptation plans have been developed. Stormwater work focused on one hazard and did not result in a formal plan. Now that we've successfully completed Step 1 of the self-assessment for Pillar 2, we'll move into Step 2, identifying priority areas for action. In this case, the municipality has not yet completed a community-wide climate risk assessment or developed a comprehensive adaptation plan. The work done so far has been limited to a single service area and a single hazard. So a key priority moving forward might be to complete a community-wide multi-hazard climate risk assessment using climate projections data and develop an adaptation plan. This will help avoid blind spots when prioritizing actions across departments. A broader assessment provides a more complete picture than siloed efforts and lays the foundation for coordinated and strategic adaptation planning. In addition, your municipality will commit to building relationships with diverse community members and integrating reconciliation, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion principles throughout the risk assessment and adaptation planning process. Complete a climate risk assessment and develop an adaptation plan that is informed by reconciliation plus AREI principles. To work on the priorities identified in Step 2, your municipality may want to begin by gathering relevant information, defining the scope of the climate risk assessment, and using climate data to identify potential impacts and assess risks to your infrastructure and community systems. You might also choose to work with a consultant to support the development of a full climate adaptation plan, especially if internal capacity is limited or if you want to ensure technical depth. Gather relevant information, define scope, access, and interpret climate projections data to identify climate impacts and assess climate risks. Hire experts to develop a comprehensive adaptation plan. This completes the self-assessment for Pillar 2. We will now move on to the third pillar, implementation and integration.
You'll notice this pillar is the same as Pillar 1 that uses the 4-point progression scale. The first milestone is Implement Climate Adaptation Plan. And since your municipality has not completed an adaptation, we can simply select the We have not yet started implementing our climate adaptation plan in the first column. Below this milestone, we'll capture some notes. We do not have a climate adaptation plan. The next milestone in this pillar is integrate into organizational systems, processes, and plans. While the Stormwater Department has made some progress in identifying risks, they haven't yet developed any adaptation strategies. So there's nothing to implement or integrate at this stage. Because of that, we'll select We have not yet started integrating climate adaptation considerations into organizational systems, processes, and plans. And we can capture a similar note under this milestone. We have not made progress in integrating adaptation into our plans and processes. The last milestone in the CRC Assessment Tool is Monitor and Review. Since the municipality has not yet developed adaptation strategies or a full adaptation plan, there's currently nothing in place to monitor or review. So here we'll select We have not yet started monitoring and reviewing the implementation and integration of our climate risk assessment and adaptation plan. Below this milestone, we'll note we have not developed an adaptation plan or strategies, so no monitoring has been initiated. Now that we've completed the self-assessment for Pillar 3, we can move into Step 2, identifying priority areas for action. While you may be in the process of risk assessment and adaptation planning, this is a good opportunity to look at existing policies, plans, and organizational processes where climate adaptation could eventually be integrated. Doing this early helps pave the way for smoother implementation when the plan is ready. Another priority might be to start researching different methodologies for monitoring and reviewing progress, so that once the plan is finalized, the municipality can move into implementation without delay and maintain momentum. So let's capture these priorities. Some activities you may choose to help make progress in the priority areas might be to review existing climate, infrastructure, land use, emergency, or financial policies and plans, and identify potential monitoring methods from the suggested activities, and we'll capture them here in Step 3. That completes the self-assessment process. Let's move to the last tab of the CRC Assessment Tool and review our snapshot.
This is the final tab of the CRC Assessment Tool, and it contains two components. In the snapshot, you can visually see where your municipality has made progress. The graphic really helps highlight how much progress has been made across the different milestones. And it's clear that your municipality is still in the early stages of climate adaptation. You'll also notice a message in the middle of the page indicating that your community does not have a climate risk assessment or an adaptation plan. If you scroll further down to the roadmap, you'll see that the tool has automatically populated a recommendation to prioritize a community-wide, all-hazard climate risk assessment and an adaptation plan in the first row. Since completing a risk assessment and developing a plan was one of the priority areas identified during the self-assessment for Pillar 2, we'll leave that item as is. Your next step will be to reflect on your assessment results and use your responses from steps 2 and 3 across all 3 pillars to generate the rest of your roadmap. This will help you identify concrete, near-term actions that move adaptation forward in your local context. That completes the 5 steps process to using the CRC Assessment Tool. A user guide is available on the CRC Assessment Tool webpage. The guide includes 4 key sections: an introduction to climate adaptation and the tool itself, an overview of the core components, step-by-step instructions with visuals, and a glossary of key terms. We encourage you to review the guide before using the tool in your organization to help ensure a smooth and informed experience.
Now that you've seen how the CRC Assessment Tool works, the next few slides will focus on how to use it effectively within your organization. We'll walk through practical tips to help you prepare, facilitate, and follow up in ways that support meaningful conversations, encourage participation, and set the stage for real progress on climate adaptation. Whether you're just getting started or already have some momentum, these tips can help make your experience with the tool more useful, inclusive, and impactful.
To get the most out of the CRC Assessment Tool, it's important to prepare and involve the right people. First, identify a facilitator to guide the process. This person doesn't need to be a subject matter expert, just someone who's comfortable coordinating conversations and helping the group stay on track. Second, start with informal conversations and share sample questions. This helps introduce the tool in a low-pressure way and gives participants a chance to get familiar with the types of questions they'll be asked. Third, encourage review of relevant plans and policies. Documents like climate adaptation plans, asset management plans, emergency management strategies, or other relevant policies can provide valuable context for the discussion. Finally, involve diverse departments and equity-related staff. Bring together perspectives from planning, infrastructure, emergency services, finance, and others. And if possible, include staff who lead on equity, Indigenous relations, or community engagement to ensure the process is inclusive and grounded in lived experience.
Creating the right environment is key to having a meaningful and productive experience with the CRC Assessment Tool. Start with a shared understanding of the tool and its purpose. Make sure everyone knows what the tool is, why it matters, and what your organization hopes to achieve by using it. This sets the foundation for a focused and collaborative conversation. Create space for open, honest reflection. Set the tone by letting participants know that there are no perfect answers. The goal is to reflect honestly on where things stand, not to check every box. Move through one milestone at a time and listen for insights. Take it step by step. As you go, listen for recurring themes, gaps, or opportunities. You can use follow-up questions like has this been formalized? Or is this happening consistently? To deepen the discussion. Support the conversation with ground rules and logistics. It helps to have a few simple ground rules in place, like speaking honestly, staying focused, and respecting each other's input. You may also want someone to assist with note-taking, timekeeping, or tech support so the facilitator can stay fully engaged in the conversation.
Facilitating the CRC Assessment Tool conversation with intention helps create a more thoughtful, inclusive, and effective experience. Involve senior leadership to show support and connect the work to organizational goals. Inviting a senior leader to attend or offer opening remarks can demonstrate that this work is valued and aligned with broader municipal priorities. It also helps reinforce that climate adaptation is not a side project. It's part of the organization's core direction. Guide the process. You don't need to have all the answers. As the facilitator, your role is to keep the process moving and support honest reflection. Help participants understand how the tool works, including its pillars, milestones, progress levels, suggested activities, and the final snapshot and roadmap. Ask open questions, give space, and gently manage the discussion. Open-ended questions encourage reflection, and brief pauses can help surface more thoughtful insights. If the conversation drifts, it's okay to gently bring the group back to the milestone or topic at hand. Use co-facilitation and follow-up to support a smooth experience. A co-facilitator can help manage time, document the conversation, or support quieter voices. And if needed, you can always follow up after the session to confirm or complete responses.
As you wrap up your session, take time to reflect on what's emerged and how to carry the work forward. Reflect on the snapshot together. Does it feel accurate? Look at the visual summary and ask whether it reflects your shared understanding of where things stand. This is a chance to confirm alignment or discuss any differences in perspective. Use the roadmap to identify real priorities, not perfect answers. Focus on practical, meaningful next steps. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Let your priorities guide the roadmap so it reflects what matters most in your context. Follow up or validate responses as needed. If something needs more input or confirmation, connect with the right people after the session to fill in the gaps or clarify uncertainty. Share key takeaways and revisit the tool over time. Summarizing and sharing what you heard can help maintain momentum and build awareness across the organization. And remember, the CRC Assessment Tool isn't just a one-time exercise. It's designed to support continuous learning and reflection over time. This initiative is offered through the Green Municipal Fund. Delivered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, GMF manages approximately $2.4 billion in programs funded by the Government of Canada.